First off, they have added a bunch of new icons to the British Air and Sea Battle Group. In the Royal Navy support side, we've got Supply Surplus and Naval Blockade at the top, and then Naval Bombardment down the bottom. And then on the Royal Air Force side, we've got the Incendiary Bombing Run and the Anti-Tank Rocket Loiter. Previously, those two icons were from Code 2, so it's nice to see they're still updating a lot of the artwork in this game. Also, if you give a right-click drag command, like setting up a machine gun, you see those 3 yellow arrows now. So they've added a new animation to the right-click drag commands. They've also done a big redesign on the center of the map, Villa Fiore. We've replaced the 2 rows of buildings with the VP in the center. Now we've got one big building in the middle, and this building actually has blind spots on either sides coming from each player's base. So it should be a lot more approachable coming into the center of the map now. Taking a look at the 1.42 balance patch. This one coming out roughly a week after the initial 1.40 patch. And I think that's a pretty good cadence for the patch to come out. You know, not like a knee-jerk reaction, but players have had, you know, quite a bit of time now to experiment, figure out what's going on, and figure out what's good. And yeah, they obviously probably want to fix up the game as well to make sure it's in a good state before they go on break for, you know, Christmas period. So yeah, starting out, we have the Artillery Officer. It's got a cost increase by 40 manpower, going up to 280 now. One interesting thing to note is that this didn't actually change the reinforcement cost. Still just 24 manpower to reinforce, so that's kind of interesting. Still quite low bleed, really. I think a Mortar crew, by comparison, is 22 manpower per model. They can't really fight back at all. So I thought that was interesting. Still feels maybe a little bit cheap to reinforce. I also saw a pretty decent suggestion on Reddit that the Artillery Officer, maybe the cooldown for it should start when the officer itself dies. Similar to heavy tanks, things like the Black Prince. So yeah, I thought that was maybe a decent idea as well. They also increased the cooldown on the Artillery Observe Overwatch to 30 seconds now, up from 20, and I think that's a pretty good start. It might still need further nerfs, but you know, this is kind of what's been causing the officer, in my opinion, to be overperforming. How frequently you can call in this. Some players were asking for maybe a munitions cost added to that. You know, we'll see how it goes. I think a lot of abilities in this game are free, so it'll be kind of out of harmony with how they're designing the game. But yeah, to me, it hasn't really felt too much like the other things have been completely out of whack. It's mainly been this ability here, so glad that's getting some nerfs. So I wanted to do a comparison here between the Artillery Officer and a Mortar Barrage. Relatively close range against a machine gun that's out in the open. On tactical pause, activate here, barrage here. See the results. So you can see the Artillery Officer's shells start to land far earlier and do damage quite a lot more rapidly depending on the scatter. So they end up getting the decrew at roughly the same time, but you know, it's the speed of the Artillery Officer's shells combined up with, you know, if you get good scatter on those first 2 volleys of shells coming down, that makes it, you know, have such big impact compared to the Mortar. So another test here, the Artillery Officer is going to come in, activate his Artillery Overwatch on my machine gun, and when the circle appears, I'm going to try and dodge away from it. See how fast we're able to get away.
Artillery incoming!
So this is a quick reaction from me, quicker than I probably have in game. So you're going to take that first volley of shells, guaranteed. Basically, it just comes down to the scatter, how much damage it does to you, if they bring it down onto a machine gun. One thing I noticed during that last demonstration is that when I brought in artillery, I could hear the initial boom 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 of the shells.
Command points available.
But when my opponent brought it in, I didn't hear the shells.
Artillery flares! Move! Infantry! Get to cover!
Is that a bug with like cheat commands mod or what? I can't remember based on my experience in game, but if that is the case where you can't hear your opponent's shells, it does make it quite a lot harder to dodge, so They do need to address that. And yeah, it does have that similar property, kind of like a loiter, where if it tracks you and you dodge out of the circle, you can still get hit out of the circle if you don't continue running. So got to be careful, got to keep going. They also increased the cooldown on the coastal reserves up by 5 seconds. But you know, the most common build in 1v1 is to build a Ketten and then 3 coastals. As you can see, if you do that, you don't actually have the manpower to call in a coastal once it's off cooldown that first time. So it doesn't really impact the most popular 1v1 build, I think. But if you just plan to go pure coastal spam at the start, your guys will be coming in a little bit slower. They also nerfed the designated artillery Overwatch. First off, they increased its cost by 10 munitions, but more importantly, they decreased its range from 60 to 55, and that's very important because anti-tank guns have 60 range. So now an anti-tank gun should be able to attack the bunker and not get attacked in return. So we'll see how that goes here. Yeah, I move forwards this. And you can see there's pretty big buffer range on that. Because I guess maybe the artillery is straight from the center of the bunker, but the AT gun can shoot like right to the edge of the bunker. So now you can see you've got a nice comfortable buffer zone for your anti-tank guns to be able to shoot at a bunker and not get shot at in return. Moving on to US Forces Advanced Infantry for the ammunition storage. Essentially they did a bug fix here, so the bonuses should be applying correctly now. On top of that, they gave the Rangers a capture and decapture rate bonus. So we'll have a bit of a capture rate race here between the Engineer, which has no capture rate bonus, and the Rangers with their much faster improved capture rate bonus. They do get in a little bit earlier. You can see they are much faster. I still think, you know, they are quite an expensive squad, so not really ideal to be running around capturing them when you could be using a scout or maybe an artillery observer. Much cheaper squad, lower combat value. But at least now, you know, if you're in a position you have to do some capping with your Rangers, it doesn't feel completely terrible. If you just looked at the patch notes, you would have seen an accuracy nerf to the Rangers Thompson. You would have been going like, oh, why did they do that? But actually it's a buff, because what they didn't say in the patch notes is that they changed where the near range for the Thompson ends. So you can see in the red we've got the old one, blue we've got the new one. So previously the near range used to end at 7, now it ends at 10. So they have full accuracy right the way up to 10 range now. So you can see you do lose about 3.5 DPS, I think, point blank. But at 10 range you have 71 versus 51. So way more damage throughout this range. Kind of, this is a very common range. You know, you'll be closing the distance, running around, trying to get in point blank. So this is a very common range for the Rangers to be fighting in, and through that area they're actually going to do quite a lot more damage now. They have also changed the Heavy Weapon Experts passive, so now it provides 20% accuracy instead of 10 on those slot weapons. And then in terms of veterancy, they've also been buffed right across the range. 5% more damage reduction at Vet 1, 10% more accuracy at Vet 2, and then 10% damage reduction at Vet 3. So they've buffed up their performance quite a lot overall with all these buffs. Quite interesting. I thought personally maybe they'd go with more of like a pop cap kind of reduction angle, or maybe reducing the tax that they provide, because they have double the population of riflemen. I think riflemen cost you 9 manpower per minute, and then Rangers is 21. So just having a squad of Rangers sucks away at your manpower income massively. This is even before you have to worry about reinforcing them as well. So they are a very expensive squad to upkeep, and Relic have kept them that way, but improved their performance even further. And finally, they reduced the munitions cost of the weapon crate drop by 10, coming down to 90 munis. Also, the Ranger weapon training unlock now costs 1 fewer command point. They also changed a few things about the M2A1 Howitzer. First off, the free fire drills ability that you unlock through the battle group. That's now had a range increase going from 80 up to 110. So it's a pretty big range increase. So that's from here, you know, out to there. It's quite a lot longer range now. It actually outranges the Mortar. You can see that. There's the Mortar. There's the Howitzer. So that's a big deal. It makes it a lot more useful. I think with 80 range, try and put it just about anywhere on the map. Even on a small 1v1, there's no way you can kind of semi-safely plant it while firing 80 range. It's just way too susceptible to artillery. So I think that's a sensible change. Just about nobody was picking free fire drills. They're all going for the rapid artillery barrage, which is pretty good. Might still be the choice over this, but at least this is a more appealing option now with the extra range. Though they do need to adjust this description here, where it says 80 range, just in the corner. They also changed the cooldown on the M2A1. So now it's only 45 seconds instead of 60. So it should be firing quite a lot more often. But that may also mean that you don't need free fire drills as much. You see, when I fire after I hit stop, it automatically goes into a free fire cooldown. So I can't free fire during this window until that's done. And then I can shoot. So I reckon I could maybe get like 2 free fires off between the barrage cooldown now. Kind of does make free fire maybe a little bit less appealing now with just the regular Howitzer barrage being so much faster of a cooldown. But the good thing about free fire is if it is during the free fire cooldown you do another barrage now, the free fire cooldown doesn't stop you from doing a barrage. So at least you got that going for you. But yeah, not being able to free fire immediately after the barrage does slow down the pace, and now with the shortened cooldown does again make free fire less appealing. Pretty safe and minor changes to the 2 new battle groups overall. I think they did launch in like a reasonably good state, all things considered. Nowhere near like Tiger Ace levels of brokenness or anything like that. So pretty well done there. I think they kind of want to err on the side of them being a little bit too good and a little bit too bad. I think it's also like faster to reach a balanced equilibrium if you launch it a little bit too strong and then nerf it down rather than launching it way too weak and having to buff it up. Plus it's more exciting, you know, if you're playing with the new stuff and it's actually viable rather than it being trash. So yeah, I think that's kind of the balance philosophy they might have had with the launch of these 2 battle groups. They also fixed a lot of the most annoying bugs that cropped up during this patch, including this one where if you converted scouts to artillery observers during their retreat, or cancel a retreat and stop the unit. Glad that one's been addressed. Also the Designate artillery Overwatch, you could use that on an incomplete bunker. That was pretty cheesy. Glad that that's been addressed. Designate defensive line was stacking, so in team games you could multiple stacks, crazy damage reductions. So I'm glad that that's gone as well. And finally, there was this one here where if you could spam on the artillery officer his artillery, you could get it in like multiple areas at once. So I'm glad they've addressed that. So good work on the bug fixes. And as always, a huge thank you goes out to my Patreon backers.